Hey everybody, it's the Iron Sun. It's been a while since I've been back. Um, Slightly under the weather right now. Think it's sinuses. I don't know. There's a couple of topics I wanted to bring up that I think are important. Uh, Today, the title is called "Jousting with the Devil." Not about making it jousting like with a Jedi and make it sound cool, but the idea of it is there are a lot of naive people running around. I was one of them. And there are a lot of people that kind of just naturally take advantage of those people. And I was trying to come up with ideas or topics, ways to combat that. And some of the methods, the reality is, some of it you can't really develop anything. Um, you develop more of a thick skin for dealing with it. Uh, yeah. Usually, I don't do live streams, in person live streams, unless there's like multiple people. Because a lot of my ideas, I just like to get them out with the ideas themselves, not with, you know, all of this. Uh, I wish it was under better circumstances, but this is what I got at the moment. Before I go to sleep, I'm going to try to cover 3 or 4 topics just off of straight audio and just give my raw thoughts and stuff, no filter. There's a couple of things that have come to mind. A couple of things I've noticed as well with my own interactions with people. Uh, some insights, where I'm at in my life, things I'm doing. I suppose I should share a little bit of that, just a tidbit, not too much. What's up, Jr.? So, to get into the meat and bones of it, jousting with the devil. The idea of it is, uh, the idea is simple, and here I'm gonna change the cam just so you can focus on my ideas because I don't really, I'm not really one for cameras. I can blame how I was raised. I don't know. So the core of this is, and I think from now on, I'm probably gonna start writing the gist of my ideas down because this was just something that was in my mind. But yeah. So now this doesn't just go for guys. This goes for anyone. This goes for women. This goes for men. This is something I've noticed that is on the energetic level where people who are closer to more kindred good energy, they're just more likely to get taken advantage of more often, just generally speaking. Um, One of the mechanisms as to why this happens is because they project their values onto other people. And they assume since they wouldn't do something to someone, that someone else wouldn't do it to them. That's the one issue, but there's other issues. The other issue is some of these people, some of it is that when they were younger, there was a degree of codependence that was put in them. They didn't know this was happening, but the narcissists or the people that they run into who some of them have a lot of interesting pathology, but some of them are just people who are just very good at sensing weakness in other people, and instead of just noticing it and moving on, they seek to exploit it as a way of it's their fuel for life. Like they live and breathe to exploit. uh Almost demonic, right? Now, this crosses gender barriers. This is something where it goes into the human spirit as to how a person interacts with other people. A normal day to day, you go up to a person and you see a person on the street, you either wave, say hello, or if there's a kid and you see the kid playing and stuff like that, you acknowledge the kid's playing, or the kid looks at you and you smile at the kid and you walk on, right? Um, not everyone interacts on that humanistic, altruistic kind of level of existence. Um, and I think it's partly to do, the blame is partly to do with our culture. We kind of, and I believe more people are, I mean, and you have victims of this, but then you also have people who are perpetrators. And you'd be surprised who the perpetrators are, or the people who take advantage of others. I've taken advantage of others. I've done it. It's something that I don't know. I think it's I was gonna say selfish gene, but yeah, I don't want this to be a super long stream because again, I don't do live streams all that much really, but maybe just a thought that people can put into their head and think whatever they want. I think the parts of people that are kindred, the parts of people that are good in this world the way it is, that part is less, it's harder to amplify that outward. It's harder to keep those values in a culture that's super selfish, super self-absorbed. The culture we live in now, it seeks to make people only care about themselves, but it does it. It's really tricky how it does it, right? Because they say things like, "Oh, self-care and self-love." Yeah, of course it's okay to take care of yourself and want to invest in yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's a degree of selfishness that's required in order for people to keep uh, narcissistic personalities, people who would want to do them wrong, at bay. You have to be selfish to some level. The only issue is you got movements like the F word. I'm not gonna say it on this channel, but you got, women's movement and stuff, like driving them to be selfish to the point where they're undesirable to the men in the country, to where the men want to go to other countries, right, to find women. That's kind of messed up. But then you also have things like the red pill and the MGTOW, which, um, for all the knowledge, it's kind of, it's still bathed in resentment, right? So then that even drives them in to be super selfish and to turn inward. It doesn't matter what movement you look at, most of them are driving people to be selfish and self. And here's the thing: I understand that the red pill, the MGTOW, and all that stuff, it actually is pointing to something that's like, there's genuine truth in these things. The only issue is it's still bathed in resentment and hatred. And I know people are gonna get angry at me for saying that, because it's like, oh, he turned. Maybe he found one. He found one, and it turned him away from. It turned him away from the truth. Truth is, people are better together than they are apart. And any movement that seeks to separate other people from other people is, in my opinion, it's evil. It's not good. It's bad. Um, that doesn't matter what movement it is. Here's the other thing, though. One of the biggest resentments that I have from my childhood, one of the biggest resentments I have from my childhood is that I grew up codependent. I grew up without, absolutely. So I grew up without boundaries, because my boundaries almost had to take a back seat to a greater uh, framework within the family that I grew up in. Um, so after all that was done, I kind of had to figure out how to rebuild myself, how to rebuild the man. So I was thinking of something today. And this is something purely on the man side, right? A lot of people in the manosphere, the red pill, they say that men are becoming weaker, for good reason. They're saying these things like as like a dire call, right? I understand it. Um, so I agree with these things. I think it is happening. Only issue is you got two different directions with that line of thinking. You got the direction where they say, oh, men are becoming weaker, and it's like cause to celebrate. Oh, look at the women. Look what they're doing. They're becoming stronger. It's like, great. If they're doing better in their lives, that's fine. But as men, if you see other men and you think that they're becoming weaker, then my thing is like, okay, seek to elevate your fellow human being, right? Now, this would be the case even if you saw your sister, um, a lady at the gym, and she didn't know how to like lift properly. Now, I know I'm trying to focus on guys, but I'm just saying like there's still a human level that has to be brought in with this in order to keep everyone connected. You can't just no, you can't separate. Here's the thing. Separating and talking about a specific thing, I just want to make this clear. There's no misogyny. It's not misogynistic. It's not bad. It's not negative. But you always have to remember that human element when you're interacting with anyone. And there's some things that are universal. One of the things that aren't universal, though, and I think that we get wrong, is that with the young boys, we make the mistake of thinking that they can switch from masculine to feminine. So we think, oh, well, if we raise him this way, well, he'll bounce back or he'll change or he'll do this and then it'll be fine. No. So at the core of the issue with the topic that I bring up, jousting with the devil, is that a lot of young boys grow up without their fathers. But then they don't get to learn all the harsh lessons and realities of human nature, like the darker aspects of human nature, because a lot of them, they're raised by their mothers. And, mothers are good. They have their place and there's a respect that has to be had. But then what's interesting is it's complex, right? Because you could write a book on this stuff and you still wouldn't really get past most of it. But I think the reason why I'm addressing this is because I'm particularly like, this is something that I can speak on because it was my life. I lived it. So when it comes to being like that codependent and then growing up and then realizing, wait a minute, I don't have boundaries. I don't have a sense of knowing. Like, there's even a point where, like, let's just say when you were younger, maybe you were unsure, right? You didn't know which way to go. And there's always telltale signs for that. The reason why I'm bringing this stuff up in the background is because a lot of the younger boys, when they're in the dating world, when they actually grow up and get in the dating world, or they interact with other men in competition or just in conversation, they often get like, I can remember growing up, there were things that were told to me. Specifically, there's this one phrase I got all the time. It's like, how old are you? Like, you're how old? Like, I would get told, you're how old? You're how old? How old are you? How old are you? And then I would answer them back. But then the idea of it is, hey, you should be going down a normal, like, you should be going up a linear path to manhood, right? But that's in the midst of being raised by a woman, which is like, it's I don't know, it's enough to make you like, it's interesting, right? I have the logical experience and the emotional like experience behind growing up in this dynamic because uh so let me try to unpack at least a couple of ideas for why how you can actually combat the devil, so to speak. I'm going to look at some of the stuff real quick. So, again, I'm under the weather slightly. The point of change for me was my older brother's death, and I don't. Hey, so I'm bringing this up because I want to look at it and don't know if it's weakness of humanity, no fear anymore, anything. I mean, yeah, I see where you're coming from. I mean, that sounded like a big deal. That would definitely throw me for a loop. That's pretty big. I don't know if it's weakness or humanity. I have no fear. Yeah. So an idea. So one of the things you gotta know is some people, they're just gonna exploit you no matter what you do, no matter how much strength you show, they're gonna exploit you. No matter how much kindness you show, they're gonna seek to exploit you because that's all they know. That's the creature they are, right? The reason why I gave you that background is because the background where like boys are being raised by their mother, that background, it creates a bunch of codependent boys who grow up and attract really narcissistic, messed up women. Um, uh, so that background helps people understand. And here's the thing: you grow up, generally speaking, even if you're a woman, you grow up with a parent and you end up being the codependent, then you're going to grow up and you're going to end up with terrible partners as well. The difference being that women, generally speaking, the average woman wants a man to be able to, and no one, you're not going to like this, but the average woman wants a man to be able to contend with her abuse, with her psychological and emotional abuse. This is just the average woman. This isn't a woman who's pathological. This isn't a woman who's narcissistic, because nature, this is a darker side of things that no one wants to admit, that I kind of just had to come to terms with just interacting with people. Nature is like a dynamo, but then the women in nature, they're the ones who run the dynamo, and the men are the ones on the dynamo, generally speaking. What I've noticed, at least in our species, is that the men are the ones who are tested. Um, Now, yes, women are tested too, but the thing is, if you look at us like in a classroom rank, women come into the class with all of they already have things checked off. They're already good. The unproven ones in the room are typically the men, right? Now, it's just the case that nowadays society is starting to give that unproven rank to women, but that's in the midst of them already having intrinsic value. Like you see, you look at all the movies, the romance novels and things like that. The man looks at the woman and he thinks, wow, she's amazing. She's already amazing just for being a woman. Now, this isn't oh, I'm being a sore loser, or I could be amazing too if I got into the gym. The point is to suggest that as cliche as it is, men must become, women just are. They just are. They already have the value. So the whole fight to get them into the workforce, into, the positions where men were, it's good. It's good that people can have the same opportunities. Only thing it's missing is that intrinsic nature kind of thing that we naturally understand. In a hunter-gatherer realm, we'd understand, because if we saw a guy and he couldn't throw a spear, well, we go, oh, he's worthless. He wouldn't propagate his genes into the future. He would die along with his genetic line because he can't throw a spear, right? So you take that into the modern day where you have men and women in the workforce. The equal idea of it, like the idea of it is good, but when you forget, when you forget the underlying mechanism, that if the guy can't throw the spear, so to speak, then his genetic line ends, and that's where you get the mass resentment for most men nowadays. Silent, it's not spoken, it's more of a underlying, like, we have to, I don't really know how to say it, because you speak about this stuff and it's hard to not come off as a radicalist or an extremist with the speech or the ways that you're thinking, because we have this framework that everything is equal and everyone is the same, things like that. But that's all. it's not true at all. Hints. Okay, so going back to the point, the idea, jousting with the Jedi, jousting with the devil. The thing about it is, I think what makes it easier is if you understand the darkness that you're capable of just as a person. um, I think that's what makes it easier to face people who have dark and negative intents, and they want to use subterfuge, Machiavellianism, and they want to bring you down. um, so those kind of people, I think I think the primary thing is for you to face the fact that you are capable of hurting someone emotionally, physically. Now, especially for men, you're capable of harming people physically. This is all too familiar with the average man because, in the modern world, it sees the exertion of physical strength as the pinnacle of negativity, the pinnacle of like the worst possible thing you could do, because the world is more feminized now. But then you have the underlying, and here's the thing with, like, yeah, of course, physically harming someone is awful, but uh, the reason why I'm bringing it up is to contrast it with emotional pain and reputation sabotage and things like that. So there's other ways to harm people just as bad, just in a different way, because the emotional pain could lead to you self-deleting, right? Which would ultimately be worse than physical pain. That's just an example, but obviously it can turn to and fro. But the society we're in is more feminized now, so it focuses more on physical exertion of violence and things like that than all the others, um, which is interesting. But yeah, I'm jumping around, but this is kind of naturally what my brain does. Hopefully, someone can find some. I think in the future, I'll probably try to add a little bit more. Uh, Try to add a slightly more structure to it. So here's a couple of things that I've noticed interacting with devils, so to speak. You don't really know you're dealing with a person who has the most negative intent, and you're not always going to have that gut feeling. My thing is, you probably shouldn't look for it. Just create scenario. You can kind of, I guess it would be the equivalent of taking a fighter stance, right? Because when you speak to people, you look at them, you use eye contact, but then eye contact would probably be really important because your body is psychic. I'm sorry, I know some people aren't gonna like that, and that's gonna sound weird to people. But when you're talking to people and you look at them in the eyes, your body's gonna notice some things that you don't notice without you even having to know. So using eye contact, that's probably one of the best ways to joust with the devil, so to speak. But you have to look them in the eye. You can't look off to the side because then you're going to miss the signs. Um, Here's the other thing. Another thing is you don't want to play yourself too strongly when you're interacting with people in general. Because some people will feel threatened by that, and that could lend to bad situations. You want to just kind of stay in the middle ground, kind of like you're boxing. You want to be light on your feet. You can't just come in hard, because here's the thing. um, that could lead to you getting thrown off balance really quickly. Um, but let's just say for this, eye contact. So eye contact's important. Another thing, you need to practice. So for men, particularly ones who are raised as codependents, um, you want to practice being assertive. Um, Practice saying no. Practice saying no. Practice disagreeing. Practice, that disagreeableness will act as a barrier for any type of negative energy. And so you want to practice that. Now, I get it. You were raised to do everything that mommy says, and I know I'm being funny. You were raised to do everything that your mom told you to because you had to, because she strike the fear of God in you and all that stuff. Um, some of that is good, but some of it is bullcrap. It's not good, because then it kind of keeps you from being fully masculine, right? So the way you break out of that, so that your psyche can actually fully develop masculine energy and accept that in, is you have to practice telling people to screw off. But you're not doing it. It's more like a righteous way of doing it, right? You're not doing it just to look tough and everything. You're doing it so that you can restructure your psyche to develop boundaries that people will respond to with respect. One of the things I regret with my past partner was that I was too giving, too forgiving, too I didn't have that. No, I had it, but it was. I would say my dignity was not as important as my as other things. I gave in too easily. I didn't realize how important dignity was, how important it was for me to feel respected as opposed to feeling loved, which for men is kind of what I'm learning. What I have learned over the past couple of years is that respect, feeling that, is how we feel loved. If we feel loved, here's the thing, and here's part of why, like, we can't really feel loved by a woman's way of showing love. How do I say that? Wait, no. So a woman's way of showing love to a man would be her showing respect. We can't, we don't really feel loved when a woman tries to project that onto us, if that makes sense. So when she tries to project what we make her feel like, I think that's when it kind of screws up. And that's kind of when they do the worst stuff to you, like when they start like breaking up with you, or like talking weird, or playing, withholding affection, stuff like that. It's when they say they love you that they start doing that stuff, which is kind of weird. But it's just how it is. Now that's now you could argue it's the same thing for like player men and stuff like that. Oh well, they do that and this and like, yeah, they do. Players are very Machiavellian. They get what they want, so then they become super narcissistic, just like the women. What else? This is actually a good stream. I'm surprised. I'm just kind of saying my thoughts, what I think, and I'm actually getting everything out, which is good. Okay, so I said eye contact. I said learn to say no. Let's see if I can come up with one more. So eye contact, learn to say no, not just for one particular thing, but learn to disagree with people and say no on stuff. And not even like, don't apologize or anything. You just say it and you walk off, or just do whatever you want to do. Or, don't stare them down like you're having a fight or something. It's just, excuse me, that's just two halves of the world, right? You got a yes and a no, and they both kind of, oh man. Okay. Let me think. Third thing, I was thinking about boxing because I started doing that just as a hobby, just to like as part of a workout. Like in boxing, you have different techniques. You have a jab, then you have combinations, you have footwork, which is important. But then you also have like I was thinking about feints, right? So if someone is like maybe you could bait them to do certain things. But I think doing little stuff like that is counterproductive, because you're going to meet a lot of manipulators and people who are a lot faster than you, a lot quicker than you, and they're more mischievous and they're more grimy. So they're more willing to do worse things. So if you try to get over on them, it could end up being worse, right? So I think um, if I could come up, so the third step, so what did I say? I said, so the first thing was eye contact. The second thing was, first thing was eye contact. Second thing was, I'm trying to think of what the second thing was. That was important. First is eye contact. Second is, what was the second thing? Maybe I'm going to have to type the second thing so that I remember. Yes. And that's what the world seems to be forgetting or just blatantly ignoring, is that females are born with their value. Um, which, it is what it is. I always thought, like, I remember there was a point in time in the past where I actually believed that whole, what is it? Like, women's lives are worse than guys. Now I understand that everyone's life is just, everyone has challenges in life and stuff like that. I can recall times when I was with my ex, so she had like period pains and stuff, right? So I would I remember rubbing her stomach or like giving her a hot pad and stuff like that. Now I know some people would say that, oh, it's not that big a deal, but like I wouldn't want to. I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't want to have to go through that stuff every month. That wouldn't be all that fun. I think what they get in an easy life, like they get like an equivalent exchange of like pain and in other ways than we do. Um, it's interesting though. I've always thought it's interesting how like guys we get, so the respect we get is from running into a bunch of hellfire with guns and stuff, or let's see, um, so when being provoked and we end up fighting someone, there's like the respect we get is from prestige and from working and things like that. Like, being usable by something that has some sort of prestige involved with it is our value. So our value is peripheral, where theirs comes like it's more internal. Well, when you become spiritual, it all becomes like, then you have value. But interesting how that works. It's not like we're separated from spirit. You can kind of see the interplay of my thoughts here. Um, yeah, so I'm trying to figure out. I'm gonna try to figure out the third one. See if I can remember all of them. So the first one was eye contact. Um, the second idea for dealing with people who are trying to get over on you. Um, so eye contact, and then I had what was the other one? You want to help me? I don't know. This is bad. I don't know. Let's see, eye contact. Then you have so eye contact. Learning to say no. Now, this obviously all this stuff expands to greater stuff, but it's good to keep things simple. The third thing I think is the most important and probably will allow you to deal with these people or just avoid them altogether is you need to recognize one thing about yourself, that you're capable of harming people emotionally and physically. You are dangerous. There are things about you that aren't good. Now you have to accept that. I think when you get to that point and you recognize that you actually cause harm to people emotionally, there are people that are probably up at night angry and sad for something that you did. You can accept that you're capable of doing that to people. I think it'll be easier for you to spot that darkness in other people. And it'll also make you a more gentle person. But only if you're willing to admit that you're capable of being a devil in someone else's life. Those are the 3 steps. So again, the first one, eye contact. Be willing to look in someone's eyes when you're speaking to them, because then there's going to be a lot of things you're going to be able to get out of that. The second thing, learn to say no. You have to become more assertive in order to develop the boundaries that you didn't have in your early life. That's going to make you more formidable around the average person, but also around a malevolent person, a person who has your worst interests in mind. The third thing, admit and be willing to forgive yourself for your dark qualities. Just admit that they're there. And see, this is going to take away the naivety, and it's going to be able to allow you to mature. So when you recognize that you can hurt someone, whether, and here's a good example, right? I was just watching a bodybuilding documentary, and I'm kind of interested in it, right? I'm not interested in getting super yoked and giant and stuff, but like the idea of building that is good, because one of the things I've noticed with people who actually do it legitimately, most of them, they develop that same thing that you get from number three. They understand that they can harm other people because they're stronger than most people, and so they harness that aggression in a way that's constructive. Um, and it's interesting. A lot of the ones that I've met, especially my friend, who he's kind of the one who kind of got me into it, among the most gentle people, but they also understand the darkness that they're capable of. And that kind of, I think, understanding that part of yourself, that you're capable of harming another person, um, and causing fear in another person, is something that I think is, it frees you, and it frees you in a way that is not common. I think a large source of our issues is because we don't, uh, the Bible says that, and hopefully I'm not paraphrasing too far off, um, something to the likes of, they perish or they suffer for lack of knowledge. Like the lack of knowledge is what, what causes them to be destroyed. Um, I think part of that knowledge, part of that understanding, is understanding that there is a dark aspect to humanity that we don't like to tap into because we see it as something that shouldn't be there. But the truth is, regardless of whether we think it should or shouldn't, it's there. And the people who are willing to accept this, they can find power. Now, you can find negative power, you can find positive power, but there's a duality in everything. So I think one of the most important things about this whole topic that I'm talking about, jousting with the devil, is that there's a dark side. There is a very dark side to every person. I don't care who it is. I don't care how nice they are. There's a darker side to a lot of people, pretty much every person. Now, the people who run away from this side, or they kind of close their ears and close their eyes to that part of themselves, those people are among the most dangerous people to be around. And those are the people who are going to inflict the most pain and suffering on people, in my opinion. So, yeah, this actually goes very deep. It goes way further, but that's beyond the scope of this. I was gonna go outward to like things that are happening into the world, but I'll just say, for the sake of men, we're all about like trying to get men to become more masculine, right? Trying to get them to be more successful in this whole sphere. But I guess one thing I would say is the whole idea of going to the gym and lifting and things like that, and getting a job and being financially well off and things like that. Working on like your appearance, getting a haircut, things like that. I think lifting is like, just as an example, right? Because there's other stuff you can do, like learning to utilize handguns safely. Now, some people are afraid of weapons to the point where it's like they don't want to be around it. But then even that, I'm sorry, some people have had traumatic experiences, but like even that's a part of themselves that can't accept certain levels of darkness. You have to accept the world that you're in. This world is very dark. It's also very good. There's good parts of it, but there's more dark than good. Um, and a lot of times, whenever there's a lot of light, we don't even see it because it's just covered in darkness. Um, don't use this as an excuse to just, turn into a nihilistic, negative person. All I'm saying is that in order to be able to contend with a demon or with a devil, a dark person, you have to be willing to accept that side of yourself that they're showing you, because that's going to give you. You're going to be able to read their moves super easy. So if they go left and you're gone, you just they start getting the fighting stance. You're going to see it ahead of time, and you're going to dip. You're going to be out. You're not even going to want to contend with it, but you will be capable of contending with it. For all the crap I give a Jordan Peterson guy, one of the things I would say that he has right is that men, and this is specifically for men, uh, we're supposed to be capable of violence, right? Um, so the idea that we're raised by uh, mothers or like school systems where they teach you to be super nice, or they say, oh, don't get in fights and stuff like that, all of that, um, that is, in my opinion, is kind of stupid. Because just from like, think about it, like, so let's just say like you had a tribe of men, and then you had the young boys and they were being raised by their mothers, right? So those tribe of men would go off and fight in wars and die. And then the older boys who were raised by their mothers, and the mothers, now a lot of times moms will just raise their sons to be super weak because they're thinking, oh, I got to protect this person, but I can't have this person beat the snot out of me, so I'm going to turn him into a teddy bear. Here's the problem. A lot of times with men, when you raise them to be a particular way, they're like swords in a forge, right? So when they come out of that forge, they're stuck in that shape. So if you raise them to be teddy bears, they're going to stay teddy bears, and they're screwed, right? Because when the invaders come, this is where I say it's stupid. When the invaders come, guess who they're going to come after? So those men are going to go off to war, and they're going to get destroyed. Uh, and that's why I would say that the Native Americans probably had it right in their particular line of thinking, where they would just take a kid, tell them to go into, well, this wasn't the native. I think natives probably had a similar thing, but I think I'm talking about, was that Scandinavians or Aborigines? Actually, several different cultures had a similar line of thought where they would tell the kid, the boy, to go and do something hard. And they'd give him a certain time frame or something like that. Maybe, yeah, like a shaman or like someone who was there to like facilitate it and just, to help along with the spiritual path. But yeah, we don't really have rites of passage for men anymore. We're kind of just, men don't really have roles anymore. They're just kind of, one of the things causing the most pain for us is we don't really have a place anymore. Um, Now, I know people will pretend like we have a place. I'm just talking about on the outer sphere of things, right? Um, but yeah, back to what I was saying. Those boys who would grow up and they would have to be warriors and things like that, they would be, basically, they'd have to relearn how to do things. But that's if they get the chance. If they go off to fight, they're going to get crushed, destroyed. It's going to look really bad. But that's kind of what we're doing to men nowadays. Which goes into a broader topic, right? Because I'm talking about jousting with the devil, but starting to realize that like one of the biggest devils for men is not, like, our society has gotten so easy, so comfortable that we're losing a reason to actually be men. Like, our reason for being men is starting to become less. And the fight would be trying to sharpen a blade where there is no tool to sharpen the blade, or trying to forge a blade where there's no heat. maybe the heat in this case is the fact that there's no real there is no real guidance. There's no real space where men interact with other men, which would be the iron sharpening iron, right? Now it used to be the gym, but I look at gyms and I go in gyms nowadays. Gyms are like just places for narcissism for the most part. It's just places where you have men and women going in the gym and they're lifting. Now here's the thing. I think a great deal of people, they actually do want to work on their physique and they want to work on their, their character and things like that. And that's good. It's not bad. Um, I would say good on them, but it's become this, you got like a bunch of circus clowns who just want to, in it. Here's the thing. It's not bad to show off. It's not what I'm saying. I just think, like, for example, you have like this thing where like a guy comes up to a woman in a gym and somehow he's like a predator just because he came up to a woman in the gym, right? It's like, here's the thing that I don't think women realize about the gym for guys. The gym for men, when you look at all the male spaces and where they've gone, which is basically there's no more. Like, the gym is basically the last bastion of masculinity for the average man. If we got rid of the gym, I kid you not, the testosterone levels of the average man would probably go right through the ground. That would probably be the nail in the coffin for anything that looks like slightly masculinity, which, as much as it's demonized to do and be nowadays, y'all think I'm joking, man. Like, I interact and talk with people all the time and I get to learn and see things. I was talking to these ladies recently at a bar and I overheard this lady saying that pretty much what she was saying. So she was saying, I want him to respond this way when I do this to him, and he didn't respond that way. So basically, like, and I know people aren't gonna like this, but the thing I was saying earlier in this conversation about how women want guys to be capable of contending with their psychological and emotional abuse, like, yeah. So that was one of the things that I kind of came to terms with, that because like she actually said it. Like, I was sitting there, right, and she said this. She's like, I wanted him to, to put her in her place, right? um I was listening to it and I was like, wow, like all the stuff that I got called like a misogynist for, or like a bad person, like this person, like with her mouth said it right in front of my face, and I was kind of flabbergasted. I was like, whoa. So it is real. Granted, here's the thing. Like, I get it. People are just abusive to each other in general. In some ways, some more or less. You have abusive men, you have abusive women. The only difference is I've noticed is that society kind of this is important. I think this is probably what I'm gonna end up wrapping up on. The problem with the topic jousting with the devil is good, because then I get to bring up important points for people for how to combat narcissistic personalities, people who are on bipolar disorder or antisocial personality disorder, things like that, because then you get to learn how these people get their food source in other people is just by people raising weak people, um, which is the gist of it. That's the humanistic, line to it all. Uh, jousting. So jousting with the devil is something that I think, and all these topics I come up with they're dear to me because a lot of them are issues that I'm dealing with myself, that I've had to overcome or figure out how to use constructively. So yeah, probably did have something to say, but I'm pretty much wrapped it up right there. So I'm gonna go over the core of this jousting with the devil. the ideas one more time. Then I'm probably going to go into the videos going to make in the future and just kind of flow with that. So, first thing I said, eye contact. Really important. And I'm being basic on purpose because obviously there's other things you're going to learn. But, basic is probably the greatest form of complexity. Excuse me. Greatest form of sophistication, being simple. Eye contact. Learning to say no and accepting that you are capable of causing harm to another person. I think this is the foundation for jousting with the devil. Now, going beyond that is when you learn Machiavellianism and you learn, subterfuge and things like that. But all of that comes when you learn to accept that there's negativity in the world. There are dark things in the world. So one of the methods you can do, or I guess one of the methods for this would be several different things, but I'll just throw it out. So this is one. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. So I ended up buying a banger, and I was learning how to use it, right? And I had friends. I would go out to the range with people and learn how to use it. And one of the things that was super interesting was that I grew up, the people I was around, like my family, had like this super interesting viewpoint around using them. And I was influenced by a lot of the things I saw on TV, things on the news. And so when I was interacting with it, there was this this fear, right? It was ridiculous, overwhelming. But I had to learn that, the darkness in me, I was projecting onto that object, right? And I was projecting and I was thinking, whoa, this causes so much harm. This causes so much pain to other human beings. And grappling with an object that is a source of contention for a lot of people was very difficult. And I remember one of the people who were core in training me, ironically, is my ex's father. But he told me he noticed that I was afraid of using it. And yeah, but here's the thing. Like, I remember specifically that there was a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage to be able to do it. But then I also grew as a person, being able to handle something that can cause pain and suffering to another person. Now, some people do that through martial arts, right? So they learn Muay Thai. And in Muay Thai, you learn how to fight, but you learn the system of fighting specifically from Thailand, right? You learn their system of fighting, which that system of martial arts, you can end up killing someone with martial arts, with punching and kicking and using your knee and things like that. You can, oh, hey, GM. How you doing? Yeah, I've been trying to get this one going for a while. So you can end up causing suffering and pain to families, and they would resent you and hate you for fighting their child in a ring and taking their life, right? That, like, it doesn't always have to be something you hold in your hand that, bang, bang. YouTube's sensitive, so I try to be careful with that. It can be other things, right? You get people that they have interesting jobs that put them in situations where they have power that can be the end or the beginning of a person's life. Being in a situation like that can put you in an interesting point to develop as a person. But I think that's where you can kind of develop yourself. So if you don't want to use the bang bang, you can learn how to fight. I think that's one of the things missing from men is we don't really get in fights anymore. Because we're like, not that we're becoming like, sad, pathetic. That that whole idea that like, oh, men are weak now, I actually don't believe it. I think the average guy is still pretty ferocious. I just think that they don't really have a reason. They don't really have anything to protect anymore, right? So all that ferociousness, it's just kind of stuck somewhere inside them, just locked away until they need it. I don't think men have become any less ferocious. Now, I have to admit that yes, there are aspects of our culture where men are starting to cross dress, and they're chopping off their Oscar Myers, uh, all of these things, trying to grapple with different parts of reality. Now, there's a part of that I could talk towards, but don't. I'm not going to talk to it on this stream. There's a different reason why they're doing that, that some people weren't really noticing. Uh, but yeah, now this live streaming I'm doing right now, this is I don't usually do them. If I do live streams, I do it with like groups of people. Otherwise, I just do talks, like 5 to 10 minute talks, which I want to get them down to like 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 2 to 4 minutes, because people's attention spans are like really terrible. But then also, I need to figure out how to say something that gets people thinking. And I think people think on phrases more than they think on large ideas. So if I can dwindle it down to some small, it kind of does go to the small attention span a little bit. um so so I'm taking a slightly different direction. um these are just I'm just throwing out some random ideas now. So I think yeah, so updates for me. I guess I'll start with that. So as an update, I'm slightly under the weather. That's why I have my head tilted up. Um, I'm going to the gym more often. That's something that I've started doing. That's a new thing. Um, I'm trying to test myself, try to see what I'm capable of, right? Um, it's interesting. The position I'm in where I'm like single, things like that, and just being like I am, like, now I wouldn't call myself like an incel or anything like that, but I don't know. I guess you can. Um, so I guess some guys don't like to be called it because it associates them with a lower status, but maybe I am. I don't know. Um, it's interesting. People claim that I'm like super attractive. Like, oh, he's so attractive the way he looks, and he's handsome and things like that. One of the things that I don't like about hearing that stuff is that the people that say it don't really realize the male existence, like your attraction. Most of it comes from other women thinking that you're good looking. Yeah. uh, GM picking fights over here. Probably not. um, most of the Nowadays, most of male attraction, it doesn't matter really how good you look, unless you're like the top 1% of looks as a man. Like, most of what other women see as attractive in you comes from other women seeing you as attractive, which I always thought was like one of the more annoying things. Now, here's the counter to that. If you go up to one of them and talk to them, and you say the right words and make them feel the right feelings, then yeah. Or if you have some niche, like there's some niche look you give off, or some niche interest that you're into, that they're into as well, then yeah, something can happen there. But generally speaking, you can look like Smeagol. Is that what I'm thinking? Trying to think who's someone who's ugly. You like the My Precious dude. So if you look like the My Precious dude, and you have like, you have like, and you got like 5 or 6 chicks like actively talking to you in public and flirting with you and stuff. Guess what? You can talk up the chick in the room across the corner, and she's gonna be elated. She's gonna love it. She's like, oh my god, this guy who's already pre-selected by all the other women wants to talk to me, and you're gonna be like, my precious. And she's not gonna think it's here's the funny part. She's not thank you, Gollum. She's not gonna think it's she's probably not gonna think it's creepy or anything because she's just gonna adjust to how everyone else is perceiving that ugly looking motherfucker. I always thought it was weird. So like, really being handsome as a guy, whatever that is, right? Because I get told that I am. It doesn't really mean anything because like even me, just being honest, to most women, like even if they okay, maybe I'm not invisible and just secretly they're thinking in their heads like, wow, that guy looks good, but I don't want to like interact with him. It could be that I'm just not picking up on the signs. But the thing about people like one, they don't like desperate men. They don't like guys who they can sense that he has some need, right? Those guys like that turns them off. They're attracted to guys that don't need anything. Like they give off the air that everything they need is already taken care of. So if the guy is like under if he's undernourished in the intimacy realm, like he has a significant other or something like that, or he has like a rotation, ironically, those guys are going to be seen as the most attractive. And the guys who don't have any women, those guys are going to be practically invisible to most women. So it's kind of interesting. They're only attracted to guys who already have a woman. So it's kind of an interesting world. Like if you're surrounded by these creatures that are only interested in talking to people who already have people, it's almost like a I don't know, like you know how in banks where if you want a loan or something like that, they're more willing to give you a loan if you own, like if you have a whole bunch of assets that they can kind of tie to, like, oh look, this wealthy business, like you know wealthy business owners and people who own like however many properties or something, when they want to like take a loan out or something with the bank is more likely to want to give you that loan because you have something. But if you just show up there and you're like, well, I know my credit score is horrible, and I know I don't have like the funds for this thing that I'm trying to build. But if you would just meet me halfway, and then you get the door slammed in your face, right? I feel like that's kind of like the average guy's situation. But even okay, even beyond guys, it seems like it's just how energy works. Like if you don't have what is that? Too much is um I was trying to think of something. Too much is given, much is received. Trying to think of a Bible verse, but it didn't come up in my head accurately, so I'm just gonna leave it. It seems like energetically you can kind of imagine that you have things and things will come to you, but I think it takes longer when you don't have anything, right? But if you have a lot of things and you imagine something, then it comes super fast. I don't know. Energy's kind of it's kind of sad actually. Like when you think about all the rom coms and stuff like that, it's like, oh, he saw the girl. Oh, the girl liked him. Oh, they love each other, right? They don't show you the part after that, the terrible stuff that happens. We rarely get to see the dark aspects of humans, which is kind of why I think it's probably why we're all so messed up. Is because yeah, we see like scary movies, but that doesn't count. We expect to see the darkness because it's about that's different. When you watch scary movies, you're expecting bad, horrible stuff, right? But then you switch to genres. A lot of these stuff, like a lot of these movies and the way of presenting stuff, it kind of formats things in a way where we're almost trying to frame a fictional world. Like we're trying to fit the way our life is, which is messy and it's good and it's bad and it's awful and it's great. We're trying to frame that in these little small caricatures of what humans actually are. But then then someone gets over on us or we get over on another person. But then it like looks completely different to like the rom-com or the comedy we watch or the action movie. Because in the action movie, you see a guy, right? And he has some issue he's dealing with. Like I was watching a Liam Neeson flick, and Liam Neeson had like he had a granddaughter, and he was trying to be good for his granddaughter. Oh, I gotta be good for my granddaughter because I never show up and I never go to her rehearsals. And the daughter's like, "You're never there, right?" And then and he's like, "Well, I got to do my mission, like my masculine mission." And he goes out, bam, bam, bam. I'll take out the bad guys, all that stuff, right? They don't show you the part where that person. They don't show you the part of life. And like at the end, the good guy wins, right? It's like, yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, like oh, and he reconnects with his granddaughter. They don't show you the parts of human. You know, they don't show you the parts where you got that guy, and he has this relationship issue, and the wife is cheating on him, and he's going out and he's doing this job, and then he just gets killed. Right? That wouldn't be fun to see. Isn't it? He's like, yeah, I gotta do my mission, and then he like runs into the room and gets his, bam, he's gone. They don't show you that part. They don't show you the part where like, you could kind of go down the frame there. Cause like we don't want to see that. Like we want to see like the fantasy land stuff. Like, oh, I want it to be a good ending. We're almost wired to make it a good ending, but then that kind of makes our lives more terrible. Like it messes up our psyches because we can't cope with the difficulties in our life because we almost expect it to go a certain way. It's part of the reason why relationships are awful, right? Nowadays, because the women, they're living in fantasy land because they have so many options for guys that they can't choose any. Like they choose a guy, guess what? He's not really their main choice. It's just secretly they're thinking, oh, I want that guy, right? But then their fantasy land stuff, like, ooh, Disney World, like, ooh, he's got to sweep me off my feet. He's got to have like at least 250 grand making that every year. But then you got the guys thinking, oh, she's got to be a perfect angel, and she never steps out of line. She never, makes, she never emasculates me, never does this, never does that. We're all doing that. All guys are doing that. Or all people are doing that. We're making caricatures of what we actually are. People are messy creatures. And we're not capable of accepting that because everything we watch and everything we consume tells us that people should fit into a box. And if they don't fit into that box, then we should desert them and leave them and discard them. Like, so it's almost like we're turning ourselves into narcissists. But because we're not realizing that we're actually more like we're messy, messed up. If you're Christian, then you would say we're fallen, right? We're not perfect. My thing is like, if we could recognize that, then that creates, just like recognizing the darkness in yourself can create opportunities. Recognizing the darkness and the messiness of others, maybe that could help us contend with people better, strengthen relationships. I was watching the show, I think 90 Day Fiance, I think it's called. It's kind of funny. I think this live stream is bringing out a whole bunch of stuff I've been wanting to talk about because I think I'm in my head all the time. But modern day relationships would be better if people never saw rom-coms, if they never watched television, then relationships would last way longer. Because that is pretty much what most of my channel is about, right? So the women, even they're okay, so they're supposed to have high standards, right? Because they're the genetic selectors. They select whose genes move forward. That's natural. That's how it is, right? Where that becomes bad is that with social media, like it never ends. So I guess I guess you could restrict it, but then you can't, right? Um, with the men, the issue is, yes, for the red pill space, okay, you have this newfound knowledge for how people operate, specifically women, and how a man should operate. But then it's bathed in resentment. It doesn't give you the enlightened way of dealing with it. Out of what? Oh, 90 Day Fiance. I'm gonna have to look him up. You know, I watched that stuff. Chicks love being caught my GM getting me on some stuff from a long time ago with this whole Walmart. That's funny. I used to want to get like super big on like YouTube. I don't even want that anymore. I just want to chat with a few people and then just kind of dip off of it forever. That's probably going to be a big conversation starter in the future. Just the idea that most of our relationships are being guided by rom-coms and stuff that's not really rooted in reality. Realizing people are messy, and if you can teach people that people are messy early, then I think relationships will last longer. That, and you also have to teach that mothers have value and fathers have value, right? And those values are both equally important to the family structure. Now, when I say equally important, this is what I mean. I have to define that. What I mean is that both are intrinsically valuable to the developing nature of a child and a family. So the feminine aspect is important because it creates connection and it creates it helps regulate emotions and things like that. But then the masculine, that side is important because it helps develop boundaries. It helps develop willpower and things like that. Now there's a lot more things you could expand from that. But yeah. I just have so many ideas, so many things I want to talk about, but I don't want to just like talk. I don't want to talk at people. I want to talk with people. Kind of curious how people like what they think about the whole with the third step for jousting with the devil, how you have to accept that you're capable of harming people. Now, Jordan Peterson, he talked about how you have to be capable. You want to become a monster. You want to be capable of doing a great deal of damage. But then you put that under control in order for it to be used in a way that is optimal, as opposed to just being this harmless creature where people go, ooh, he would never hurt a fly. There's a lot of stuff in my past that I remember that wasn't so good about how people perceive me. People perceive me as, well, it was mixed, right? I was a mixed bag because there were times where I would be violent, but it was after having a very long fuse. Like I remember I got in a fight. This guy in grade school, what was it, 8th grade, 7th grade? I don't remember. He, what did he do? Oh, I think he pushed me or something. I warned him like 2 times. So, first time he pushed me. And I said, look, man, don't do that. And he did it again. I'm like, listen, last try. Do not do that. And he did it again. And that's when I proceeded to get on top of him and pound his face in. And what's funny is some lady was watching in a car and she was screaming his name. This was slightly off campus, slightly. But like, that's one of those things where I'm thinking like, maybe we do need bullies, right? Like, I know it sounds bad, and that wasn't bullying him. That was me asserting. So it's weird, even though I talked about being a codependent, it seems like I did have some boundaries deep inside. There were things inside of me that were just naturally masculine that just took longer for people to press up against for me to respond to, which I guess I'm grateful for that side of me. Uh, some people would say that I'm a rebel deep down, but I think every man is supposed to be a rebel to some degree, but then just the human spirit in general is supposed to want to rebel against things that are naturally against freedom. And generally speaking, freedom is something that I think is on the side of good. It's on the side of light. Um, Now, when you try to restrict people beyond like what is reasonable, then I think that's where you start to get into evil and darkness and things like that. Which, yeah, just understand that what I said about darkness and evil, it still goes, even though I'm saying it as a bad thing. Oh, man, I think this was a good stream, but I'm just talking at a camera for like an hour. That's ridiculous. To me, it's kind of ridiculous. But I do mean what I'm saying. I'll say that. All right. See if I can figure out how to wrap these. I'm going to look at some comments. Whew. It's been a while. Boxing is awesome. A female comment. Pointed chains. Yep, I'm back on. All right. So, in terms of the content I'm going to make in the future, I'm probably going to make a couple of videos tomorrow, and I'll probably still be slightly under the weather, but it is what it is. I think there's probably 2 videos I want to make, super short, just audio, 2-3 minutes. See if I can get some background, work on making something good with that. Write down the ideas before I see them instead of just keeping them in my head. But not like a whole script, just like the gist of things so it can flow naturally. So these are some things that I've noticed about the manosphere, red pill, all that stuff. So I think it's starting to change things. I think guys are going through an interesting change. I've talked to guys in the gym. I've talked to guys at a lot of places, and I've talked to women as well. And I think that a lot of stuff that's going on. He said, "Oh, said which Liam Neeson movie is that?" I gotta think about what movie it was. What movie is that? I'm just now seeing your comment. What movie is a Liam Neeson movie? It wasn't Taken. It was I forgot something. A movie about him involved in a government conspiracy, or a conspiracy with the FBI about like something about Operation Freedom and how they were taking out federal whistleblowers and hiding the documentation, and how he uncovered this being a thing while being loyal to some guy. I know the plot, but I forgot the name of it. It was kind of cool. Anyways, most of the stuff we watch is just programming anyway. It's not really like, you can't really like cheer for the underdog all the time. A lot of it is just, oh man, a lot of stuff we watch is just bull malarkey, but it passes the time. Man. So what I was saying about the manosphere, what was I saying? There's some guys that are saying that the chicks in the manosphere are kind of the ones that are coming in are starting to mess it up. Yeah. Mm, I don't know. It's weird. Like we're kind of maybe we're focusing on the wrong things. Maybe we should just um, set a target, just in a masculine sense, like set a target for where we want to go and hit that target, and then just move on from there. We could gossip about people all we want. Everyone in the space, I don't care who it is. I don't, if they're rooting for the people who are trying to, if they're rooting for people um, who are being actively made weaker and trying to get them stronger, they're on my side. I think they're on the good side. Now, if it becomes weird and they start being finicky and stuff like that, then I have to go. But I can't really go off of what other people say about other people because there's a saying, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that generally speaking, lies get across to people way faster than the truth does. And I don't know why that is, but even if I mentally tried to process how that energetically works, but generally speaking, people pick lies get to people. It's true. People oftentimes they get a lie and they get it super quickly, but then the truth that is underneath that lie is like it's like a whisper, right? The people who can hear the truth are the people who they're waiting and they're listening. A lot of times you hear the lie over the loudspeaker, and then you just hear the. Now this is I'm getting this from a saying. I think there's a person that I'm alluding to who said this, that lies are like yells or like screams, they're hollers, but then the truth is a whisper. The truth is that small thing that you it's a very faint thing. Anyways, so yeah, I'll end by saying the last three or the three ideas I covered with this whole live stream, which I don't do very often. So, you know, jousting with the devil. Um, First step, just in my opinion, these are my ideas from my point of view, based off of my experience. First step is to look someone in their eye. The second step is to learn to say no. Uh, the third step is to accept that you're capable of causing harm um, to another person, even to the point of either ending their life or causing a great deal of suffering to people. You are capable of that. I'm capable of that. Um, I think that's the foundation for especially for men, which is needed specifically for men, because the idea of being a man is kind of um, what that actually means is under attack, and it's under attack even by the people who have the best means for men, right? Um, like in the black community, the idea of being a man is also seen as a negative thing, which is interesting. 'Cause, the black community is like this weird matriarchal kind of setup, which is like super emasculating. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that right now because that's a whole different topic, which kind of feeds into the main topic. But yeah. So those are the three topics, and jousting with the devil.